Tesla is not doing well. I mean, it tumbled below 150 a share, which it hadn't been for over a year, and it's down basically 40% for the year. There's a feeling that, well, the big news was they announced they're going to lay off 10% of their staff globally. That's 14,000 people. That's a serious cut. That's a lot of people on the street. Then it said, in a wild moment of, juxtaposition, announced it was going to reinstate Musk's $56 billion pay package. I think it's down to 44 billion now. But they're going for that again in the Delaware Chancery Court, I guess. And people were hoping the one bit of good news on Tesla was going to be the introduction of their new $25,000 Model 2. And now word is out that it looks like Elon's going to scrap that project. What do investors in Tesla have to look forward to right now? Hey, Scott, good to see you. Looks
Thank
like
you.
Off on a story.
Just wrapping things up, and I'm sure there's lots to talk about. It's been a busy week.
By God, we have verisimilitude on this podcast. You're literally out on the beat, chasing down crime.
Exactly.
It's been a hell of a week, especially for the Magnificent Seven. We're not going to be talking about small companies or products this week. We have a lot of other news. And let's start with Google, because it got a lot of international news this week. Earlier in the week, a bunch of protesters, estimated at about 80, showed up at Google offices in Sunnyvale and New York. In the one in Sunnyvale at headquarters, they apparently marched into the office of the cloud CEO, Google Cloud CEO Thomas Kurian, and did a sit-in stating "No Tech for Apartheid," which I guess is their campaign. They say that Google and Amazon are leading the world's first AI-powered genocide by allowing Israel to access its technology. Well, interesting. If something like this had happened, 2-3 years ago, because it kind of did at Google a few times, the company would have just sort of stood by and let it happen. But something's changed. There's been a sea change among companies just in recent weeks about these pro-Gaza protests. And Google called the cops. And the police, Sunnyvale police came. They stuck around for a few hours. Most of the protesters left, but 5 remained, and they were arrested. Google then did some research to figure out who these protesters were, stating that they were in violation of company policy, and they found so far 28 of those protesters. They've identified them, and they immediately put them on suspension. And then on Thursday, they fired him. Now, the image of Google firing people over cause in mass, I don't think we've ever seen that at Google, have we?
Not really. Although this is like you say, a different sort of thing. I was covering this as it was going on and was getting messages back and forth from some of those protesters. And they had said, yeah, here we are, the workday is over. And then a little while later, the cops show up. And then I get another, series of texts. We're being arrested. And then, hey, we've lost our jobs. And I think at this point, you can debate the effectiveness of something like this. But really what it comes down to are employees saying, we don't think this is how we should make money. And the company saying, hey, you have options, not within the company, but perhaps elsewhere. And, a lot of people were commenting to me after I put this out on Twitter, why would they stay if they disagree so much with what their employer is doing? That's legitimate. And why would Google keep them if they're criticizing literally how Google makes its money? And that also is legitimate. So this was a mission, it seems, to get attention, to get the word out, and they did. But ultimately, you kind of had to see this coming. This is not walking out and saying, as they have in years past, our company doesn't pay women as much as men. Where the company says, hey, we understand the walkout and we're going to actually look at this and remedy this. This was some workers saying, we don't agree with how the company makes money. And that's a tough one to turn around.
Well, I thought it was interesting. This happened almost simultaneous with blocking the access road to O'Hare Airport in Chicago, blocking traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge. And in both of those cases, the police basically treated them simply as protesters and stood by and eventually kind of broke it up. Google, a private business, essentially said, you violated our standards, our rules, gone, which is how companies traditionally dealt with this kind of stuff. Especially if you walk into the offices of a senior executive. If you want to stand outside with signs, that's one thing. But to actually invade a company's facilities and your employees, that's a direct strike against the company.
Well, right. And I think this was a different goal, a different group, a different strategy than to shut down traffic on, the Golden Gate Bridge, and different consequences. And like you say, this is a private company. It can do what it wants. And these are employees that can work at a place, and hopefully where you work, you enjoy what you do and you respect what you do. And if you don't, why would you be there anyway? And so this almost felt like an inevitability once it got started.
Okay, well, as long as we're on Google, I should also mention that according to Business Insider, the rumors are that Google's about to lay off an unspecified number of employees as well as a cost-cutting effort, and it has to do primarily with the real estate and finance departments. So it sounds like Google's, this protest aside, it's still paring away at its operations to cut overhead, not getting boned, but taking off this, outside, real estate, probably PR, that sort of thing, trying to save money. Do they see something in the future, or is this just a good moment? I mean, their stock's okay. Their numbers haven't been that great. And we're going into earnings season, as we mentioned last time, but now it's about to happen with Netflix starting, I think, today. So what do you think? Is this just business as usual?
I think it's a new usual for these tech companies. It hasn't been business as usual in years past. In years past, it's hey, we've got to cut because we're too big. We need to save money. These companies that have been cutting lately have been at all-time highs. They're making big revenue. They're cutting for efficiency. I think they're cutting to please investors. But as we've talked about in the past, they're also cutting because if you're not focused on AI right now, your job is in jeopardy. And I think these companies are trimming what they see as perhaps unnecessary fat. Will AI be the be-all, end-all that they think it is? I don't think we know yet. But I think what we do know is that there is something of a new normal right now. And that is these companies cutting employees, not because their profit margins or stock prices are way down, but because they just want to be as lean as possible. They've sort of looked at what Elon Musk did with Twitter, which was just to rip out the foundation and cut almost everybody, and said, okay, that isn't working all that well. But we can be more efficient if we do some of that. And so I imagine we're going to see more of these sort of, I don't know, call them surgical cuts in the future.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, we're doing great. Here's your bonus. You're fired. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that before. And I've been in this town for a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there was usually a rhyme or reason to layoffs. And now I think there's a different reason to add to that. And it's just a different scenario where these very successful, gigantically profitable companies are still saying we can trim things a little more thanks to AI, to please shareholders, whatever it is. And I mean, the idea that Google is doing that when Google just hit a $2 trillion valuation, you'd think this is a company that really doesn't need to let anybody go. But we should also mention, to be fair, a lot of these companies that are laying people off are also hiring at the same time, but in different strategic areas.
Right. I read an interesting theory by some stock analysts saying that the AI boom, the first AI boom, is probably coming to an end. And that's the one for chip companies. And that now the market is going to start rewarding companies that are producing software specifically that uses AI. And that's going to lead for the next year. So we've been through one round and now it's shifting. You buy that? It sounds reasonable.
It really does.
AI's got to prove itself now. I mean, the future, the probability, the hopes, they've now been played out. Now it's like, show me some real applicable uses of this stuff.
Right. I think it does make sense. And it was interesting. We talked about how chips made the sort of foundation for this AI, and they were, for those who wanted to invest in it, the publicly traded companies you reached out for. And boy, did we see some incredible gains.
Right.
But, you look at Google, you look at Meta to an extent, certainly Microsoft becoming the most valuable company. So, right, it's going to be software and services, I think, that are next. Apple is making a play now, certainly Amazon. And I think you're absolutely right in that it is time to show some results, not just for business, but maybe even for the consumer side. How can we benefit from AI? Because we're certainly scared of it because it might take our jobs. How can we benefit from it?
Okay, let's go through some of the rest of the Magnificent Seven. Today was Tesla. No, I'm sorry. Today was, what
Netflix.
was, pardon me?
Netflix was Thursday, yes.
Netflix was the day, and everybody was predicting, they're going to have some good numbers. And yet, everything seemed a little soft. The market seemed to be surprised. It was down a ways.
The stock was down a ways, but goodness, look at how it's performed this year alone. I mean,
people are
huge.
saying it should be in the Magnificent Seven now to join all the other big companies.
Right. I mean, Netflix has been an absolute leader. It was a pioneer in streaming. Now it's a leader in streaming. Everyone else seems to be trying to catch up. But again, like many of these companies, they have been such high flyers, and it's almost, I mean, really, and we saw NVIDIA do this with its earning report. You wondered what could it possibly put out to go even higher, and it did, to its credit. But Netflix is sort of in that area. How could it possibly get stronger? It added a lot of subscribers, and that's what people generally want to see because that means more revenue is going to come in steadily. But you're right. The future is a little uncertain. There's a lot of competition out there. It's almost like the default way of seeing a movie now is to stream it on one of, I don't know, the 7 services you may have in your home, as opposed to going to a theater. And that's both impressive, and it's got to be a little nerve-wracking for investors at Netflix just because everybody else is now in the game.
Okay. So their numbers were a little bit down. They were the first one out of the tech companies, the big tech companies, earnings season. Most of it's going to be tomorrow and next week. What do you think? Tesla is not doing well. I mean, it tumbled below 150 a share, which it hadn't been for over a year. And it's down basically 40% for the year. There's a feeling that, the big news was they announced they're going to lay off 10% of their staff globally. That's 14,000 people. That's a serious cut. That's a lot of people on the street. Then it said, in a wild moment of, juxtaposition, announced it was going to reinstate Musk's $56 billion pay package. I think it's down to 44 billion now. But they're going for that again in the Delaware Chancery Court, I guess. And people were hoping the one bit of good news on Tesla was going to be the introduction of their new $25,000 Model 2. And now word is out that it looks like Elon's going to scrap that project. What do investors in Tesla have to look forward to right now?
I don't know. I think that they've had plenty of gains, and now they're at a bit of a crossroads in a similar way that Netflix is. Other companies have not caught up. Let's be clear. Tesla's still the
Yeah.
leader in EVs, but they're getting there. And I say that's great for the environment, but not necessarily great for Tesla investors who are getting a little nervous. Um, Tesla's stock fall has coincided with its sales numbers dropping. And this is interesting because Tesla is saying the sales are down a bit and the stock goes down. Tesla is also saying, hey, we've got all this technology. We're going to bring out the latest self-driving stuff. We're going to talk robots, and investors are yawning. So Tesla seems to be, or seems to need to learn the lesson that its stock price, at least, is kind of based on cars, not
Yeah.
technology per se, not whiz bang, whatever level of driverless autonomy they're talking about these days. It's based on cars and car sales. And if
Yeah,
those
386,000 vehicles shipped from January through March compared to 423,000 last year, down 9%.
right, and the stock fell because of that. And so when it reports earnings, I think what investors probably want to hear is, hey, we've got more cars on the horizon. I'm just not sure that those investors will be mollified if Elon Musk comes out and says, we're getting better at our humanoid robot, or the features that are in the car. I think they want to see car sales and maybe a new model, and maybe something about how much, I don't know, money they're making on the Cybertruck or something. But that seems to be what moves Tesla's bottom line, are car sales. I know everybody thinks of them as a tech company, and they've earned that, but really they're a car company, and they need.
And just as an aside, SpaceX is doing some of the most extraordinary things in the history of, rocketry, and they're going to be about to launch missiles like every other day in the near future. We got to stop and pause and credit that miracle over there. I mean, I have a feeling Elon's legacy is going to be space and not in electric cars.
I mean, that's possible. I think he's proven that you can do them both. He's also proven that you can really tweet your way to distracting people from recognizing either, and that's yikes. But yeah, I think both are impressive, and both have made enormous amounts of both progress and money.
Right. Okay, let's get to Apple. Apple's having the roughest year of them all, I think. You got the antitrust lawsuit from the Justice Department. Quarter sales are expected to fall 4% from last year. And it's going to, apparently in June at the developers conference, they're going to announce a flurry of AI products. But that remains to be seen. That Apple does sometimes miss those dates. What's their short-term prognosis? This is a company that seemed invulnerable, that it was it was marching ahead, leaving the rest of the business world behind, and now it seems a little bit dazed and confused.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that invulnerability you speak of because of iPhone sales, and those have taken a bit of a hit, and that's really where Apple makes so much of its revenue. So I imagine in this next event, when it's going to talk about AI, it's really going to talk about AI. It's sort of hinted at it in previous events. Hey, if you move your hand, you can get the watch to do this. But I think now we're really going to get some AI, and that's what investors want to see. And I imagine Apple device lovers want to see is how, you said it at the top of the show, how is AI going to help us in our daily lives? I give you Exhibit A, the iPhone. What is it going to do with AI to help us in our daily lives? And I imagine we'll see a little bit of that.
It better be a Steve Jobs moment. I mean, you're reading stories. When Jobs died, I wrote his obituary in the Wall Street Journal. I said, Tim Cook's going to be a great CEO. He's going to make the trains run on time. Apple's going to be wealthier than ever before. But can Apple still produce a killer product, a world-changing product after Steve Jobs? And they haven't to date. They have a watch, but they've killed a lot of projects and products And the question is, the world is really waiting for Apple to come out with a monster AI solution. Does a company have it in them to do that?
I don't know. I mean, what would it look like? The solution that consumers get to use so far, and I don't mean what's making work more efficient, data processing and all that stuff. I mean, purely on the consumer level. And maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm thinking Chat GPT is the one that sticks out. And I've got the Chat GPT app on my iPhone now. And so I can ask it to do things or draw me pictures or whatever. I just don't know how the killer app would be with the killer device, which is the iPhone that everybody has. How is AI going to play into that?
Yeah, but remember, Apple's genius was it produced products that we didn't know we wanted.
Right.
But the moment we see it, we have to have it. We have to make it central to our lives. And we haven't seen it in a long time. And I'm beginning to read little stories and comments out there like, is Apple ever going to do it again? Is it ever going to hit that home run, that $1 trillion new market creation that just changes the paradigm?
It might. It very well might. And it's probably the leading candidate to do so. But look, you just said it yourself. Apple is the one that tells us what we need when we don't even know. I don't know what the killer AI app is going to be. Apple isn't ringing my phone off the hook to say, hey, we need you to come design our AI app for the
If I knew what the app was, I'd be driving it, right? I'd be in the car with you going up to Sand Hill Road to get money.
Right. And there's a reason that we're not. And so I am curious, which is what I get paid to be, as to what Apple will do next. But I'm curious because I haven't seen a life-changing use for AI in the consumer world yet. But right, if anyone's going to do it in the modern era, it's going to be Apple.
Okay, let's get to Meta. Meta's the one that's doing great right now. I mean, its stock's is up 47% this year. They're getting more and more traction. It's still reaping benefits from the 2023 year of efficiency. And now I've seen some wags write, well, if Meta really wants to get rocketing out there and leave everybody else behind, smartest thing it could do would be to shutter Reality Labs and kill Metaverse and save $10 billion a year. That would be an interesting play. If all these companies are trimming off all this extraneous stuff to get lean and mean and look good on the stock market, how about saving $10 billion a year with getting rid of a initiative that nobody's excited about except one guy?
Right. And that's why its stock price went from 90 to 500 in a year, because he admitted we're spending too much money on the metaverse. Let's have the year of efficiency. But you're right. The metaverse didn't go away. And that one guy still apparently wants to see it pretty badly. That said, I mean, how staggeringly effective is Meta at printing money if it's losing that much of it in this as of yet failure to launch gigantic thing, which is the metaverse? I mean, it's staggering, the usage and the money that comes in via Instagram and Facebook and even WhatsApp. I mean, just they're printing money, and they've convinced Wall Street that they're doing it in a more efficient way.
Does anybody care about the metaverse anymore? I mean, it's almost like the moment ChatGPT came out, the world forgot about let's go live in cyberspace and talk to each other, and instead say, we have a new friend that will give us everything we want. If he were to introduce Metaverse 3.0 right now, would it get even any attention?
No, I really don't think so. The people I know that have and like the Oculus headset have it and like it because it's a cool gaming console, essentially. And they like, and I've played games with Oculus or, all these headsets, and it is a cool immersive experience. So, I mean, imagine, Zuckerberg says, hey, metaverse is over. We're finished with it. We're going to keep marketing Oculus as, your next Xbox, your gaming thing. I mean, yeah, Wall Street would probably go crazy, but he may still think that the metaverse is the next platform for your social interactions. And so it may be around for a while longer, but yeah, I don't, to answer your first question, I don't see anyone that's excited about it.
Yeah, I'll put that software right next to my pets.com doll on my collect yourself for future use for resale on eBay in about 20 years. And speaking of eBay, on a final note, let's talk about Amazon. The Wall Street Journal. Did you read the story in the Wall Street Journal? Amazon was so obsessed with its competition and its need to completely dominate the e-commerce market that it wanted to gather information on rivals like eBay and Walmart. So what it did, it started a company called Big River Services International as part of its Project Curiosity 2015 effort to understand Amazon's rivals. And it started selling stuff as a business and as collectors on eBay and Walmart and other companies to figure out how they were treated as customers and how the experience went. I guess this is legal, right? I mean, companies will go into other stores and buy stuff, right? You have these retail spies, but Amazon, like the biggest company in retail in history, is out selling like used Beanie Babies on eBay and going in and buying rolls of toilet paper in Walmart as a fake company to find out how they do it. What do you think?
I mean, that's traditionally customers sort of spy, and I put that in air quotes, on each other. Whether if I have a gym, I'm going to go visit your gym to see what's better. If I have a restaurant, I'll see your restaurant. This is not my favorite tech competitor story. That's got to be, and we go back about 20 something years when Oracle was dumpster diving at Microsoft. You remember that with the trash? And they said they called it spying as a public service or something. But yeah, I mean, these competition stories are always fun. It's amazing what Amazon is doing, and cruel what Amazon is doing to stay on top. I just don't understand why it can't treat people better and be a slightly more normal company and still have $1 trillion valuation.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird company.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Oracle is a weird company, but Amazon is like an even bigger stranger. I don't know if it's malevolent, if it's, it's hard to say what's going on there. And you got the founder going out on his giant yacht and showing up at events, and it's weird. Anyway, for the reader's sake, Big River sold items like T-shirts, shoes, and beach chairs. So if you're looking at any of those things on Amazon and you see the manufacturer is Big River, you're actually buying from Jeff Bezos. Just thought you'd like to know.
It's not even really much of a disguise of a name, is it? Amazon, Big River.
Yeah. That's it for now, folks. You can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can see Scott on Facebook and X. And of course, almost every weeknight on NBC Bay Area. And me occasionally almost everywhere in the world on the BBC, more and more these days, on the BBC radio show Business Matters. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. And Scott, your door behind you has been opening and closing. You might want to check that before you take off.
Thank you.
All righty. See you next week. Bye-bye.